It happened again this morning. You woke up, you had not eaten a single thing since dinner last night, and you checked your blood sugar the way you always do, and the number was higher than it was when you went to bed. Higher, after 7 or 8 hours of not eating. Your body was supposed to be resting, and somehow, in the quiet of the night, your blood sugar went up anyway. You sat there for a moment and thought the same thing you always think. What am I doing wrong? I am going to walk you through 5 mechanisms, 5 specific ways. One overlooked mineral is directly driving the blood sugar problem you cannot seem to solve, and we are counting down from 5 to 1. Number 1 is the mechanism that ties everything else together, and it explains something most people have never been told: why the very habits you adopted to get healthier may be accelerating the deficiency that is making everything worse. Stay all the way through. That last piece is the one that changes the whole picture. Let me describe the experience that brought you here. And I want to be specific because I think you deserve to hear someone describe it accurately. You have been managing this carefully. You have read the articles and followed the advice. You cut back on sugar years ago. You reduced the bread, the pasta, the white rice, or eliminated them entirely. You started walking more. You read labels now with an attention most people do not bother with. You have tried the low-carb approach, and for a while it seemed to help. And then something shifted, and you ended up back at the same numbers, the same crashes, the same unpredictability. The mid-morning energy drop that arrives like clockwork between 9 and 11, the kind that turns coffee from a pleasure into a necessity. The afternoon heaviness that settles in after lunch, even when lunch was careful and reasonable. The brain fog that makes the simplest tasks feel like they require more effort than they should. The morning readings that refuse to come down to where you need them, even on days when you ate almost nothing the night before. And underneath all of it, a feeling that is harder to describe but just as real. The sense that your body is no longer responding the way it used to, that the rules have changed, that you can do everything right by every measure you have been given, and still get the wrong result. You remember a time, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, when carbohydrates just were not the complicated thing they are now. You ate bread and felt fine. You had fruit and it was just fruit. Something changed, and nobody has ever sat down with you and explained precisely what or why. You are not imagining any of this. And here is what I need you to hear clearly. It is not simply aging. It is not a personal failure. It is not about willpower or discipline. It is about a system, a specific, identifiable biological system that has been operating without one of its most essential components. And that component is almost certainly something your doctor has never tested for, never mentioned, and never connected to the symptoms you have been living with. Here is something I want you to hold on to as we go through today. There is a specific finding in the long-term research on metabolic health that stopped me in my tracks when I first encountered it. In a large study tracking thousands of people over many years, individuals with the highest levels of a specific mineral had up to a 71% lower risk of developing insulin resistance compared to those with the lowest levels. Same food, broadly similar lifestyles, completely different metabolic outcomes. 71%. That is not a minor statistical footnote. That is a finding that rewrites the entire framework for understanding why some people develop insulin resistance and others do not. The mineral is magnesium, and by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why that number is possible, why magnesium sits at the center of your body's glucose management system in a way that nothing else does, and what is happening right now if your levels are where most people's levels are, after years of eating what the modern world provides. My name is Dr. Jane Mitchell. I have been working in metabolic health and insulin resistance for more than 20 years. I have reviewed hundreds of clinical studies on blood sugar, mineral status, hormonal regulation, and the specific factors that determine why some people's glucose management systems decline and how to reverse that decline when it happens. I spent weeks going through this research, specifically because I kept seeing the same pattern in patients who came to me frustrated. They had done everything right by conventional standards. They had cut carbs. They had exercised. They had taken their medication faithfully. And they were still stuck. And over, when I looked at the underlying picture, the same overlooked factor kept appearing. Not in every case, but in enough cases, and with enough consistency in the research, that I stopped treating it as secondary. When I found out how central magnesium is to the insulin signaling pathway, specifically how many of the processes that fail in insulin resistance depend on adequate magnesium to function, I was genuinely angry that nobody was talking about it in the way it deserved, not as a supplement you might consider, as a foundational mineral without which the entire glucose management system operates at a fraction of its capacity. This is the stuff I wish someone had told my patients 10 years earlier. I am going to give it to you now. Before we dive in, if you're finding this useful, take 2 seconds right now, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a video, and give this a thumbs up. It genuinely helps more people like you find this content. And drop a comment below, tell me what country you're watching from. I'd love to know where our community is tuning in from around the world. Hold on a second. Before we go any further, I've put something together for you. It's called the Glucose Paradox. It's a free guide on blood sugar and diabetes, and you can grab it for free through the link in the description. I'm telling you this now because I want you to finish this video with a concrete tool in your hands. To get it right away, just click the link in the description, head over to my site, and drop your email. You'll receive the guide in your inbox a few minutes later. But I don't want to take up any more of your time. Let's get back to the video. Before I get into the 5 mechanisms, I want to tell you about a woman named Evelyn. Evelyn was 63 years old, living in Raleigh, North Carolina, and she had been managing pre-diabetes for 4 years when she first came to see me. She was not a passive patient. She had read extensively. She had tried multiple dietary approaches. She had worked with 2 other practitioners before me. She was, in her words, a very informed person who could not figure out why the information was not working. When Evelyn described her symptoms, the picture was immediately recognizable. Fatigue that did not respond to sleep, morning blood sugar readings that seemed disconnected from what she had eaten the day before, a pattern of managing well for a few weeks, and then having things inexplicably shift in the wrong direction again, muscle cramps, particularly at night, difficulty staying asleep, and a persistent anxiety, a low hum of it, that she had attributed to stress about her health, but could not fully resolve even when things seemed to be going well. When I looked at her dietary history and her supplementation, she was doing almost everything right by conventional standards. What she was not doing, what nobody had ever suggested she consider, was addressing her magnesium status. Her standard blood test showed serum magnesium within the normal range, which most practitioners would consider the end of the inquiry. But serum magnesium, as I am going to explain, tells you almost nothing about what is actually happening at the cellular level. We started there. We worked through magnesium in a way that accounted for the mineral interactions I am about to describe to you. And within 6 weeks, Evelyn sent me a message that said, "The morning numbers are finally making sense. For the first time in 4 years, I feel like I understand what my body is doing." Hold that thought, because by the time we reach number 1, you will understand exactly what changed for Evelyn and why it had been missed for 4 years. Now let us go through the 5 mechanisms. We are starting at number 5 and building toward number 1, and each piece of the puzzle will make the next one clearer. Number 5, how magnesium controls whether insulin can actually do its job at the cellular level. You know the feeling I want to start with here. You eat something careful, something that should not spike your blood sugar, and 2 hours later the number is higher than you expected. You checked the carbs, you ate a reasonable portion, and the response is still off. That mismatch between what you ate and what your body did is often not about the food. It is about the system that processes the food. And that system depends on magnesium at a very specific point. Think of your cells like rooms that need fuel delivered to function. Glucose is the fuel. Insulin is the delivery signal. It knocks on the cell door and tells it to open. But here is what most people are never told. The mechanism inside the door that responds to that knock, the internal lock that releases and lets glucose in, requires magnesium to function. Without enough magnesium, the lock jams. Insulin arrives. It knocks. The cell barely responds. Glucose stays in the bloodstream. Blood sugar stays elevated. And your pancreas keeps sending more insulin, trying to force a system to respond that simply does not have the mineral support it needs to work properly. The scientific term for this is impaired insulin receptor signaling. The receptor, the keyhole on the cell surface, connects to insulin just fine. But the intracellular chain reaction that should follow, the sequence of molecular events that ends with glucose entering the cell, is disrupted at several points that require magnesium as a cofactor. The chain stalls, the door does not open. Multiple well-designed studies have confirmed that when people increase their magnesium intake, insulin sensitivity improves measurably, even without significant changes to diet, exercise, or medication. That result is telling us something important. It is telling us that for a significant number of people, the core problem is not the carbohydrates they are eating. It is that the mechanism responsible for processing carbohydrates is operating without the mineral it needs to function. This also explains something that frustrates almost everyone who cuts carbs for blood sugar management. In the beginning, it works. Blood sugar stabilizes, readings improve, and then weeks or months later, things slip back. The body finds ways to compensate. The underlying signaling problem is still there. Reducing carbs reduced the demand on a broken system, but the system is still broken. The lock is still jammed. And until you address the mineral deficiency that is jamming it, the problem is going to keep reasserting itself in one form or another. That is number 5, the foundational mechanism, the one without which none of the others fully make sense. Number 4, how magnesium regulates the rhythm of insulin release from your pancreas. Here is a symptom I want you to recognize first, because I think this one will resonate immediately if you have been managing blood sugar for any length of time. You eat the same meal on Monday and feel completely fine. You eat the same meal on Thursday and crash hard afterward, foggy, tired, hungry again within an hour. Same food, same portion, totally different response. You have blamed the food. You have wondered if there was something different in that batch of ingredients. You have considered whether stress played a role, or whether you ate it too fast, or whether some other variable you cannot identify was responsible. In many cases, the variable is your pancreatic signaling stability, and that stability depends heavily on magnesium. Most people think of the pancreas as a simple on-off switch. Blood sugar rises, pancreas releases insulin, done. But the reality is far more sophisticated, and the precision of that system is what makes the difference between stable blood sugar and unpredictable swings. Your pancreas releases insulin in pulses, rhythmic, carefully timed bursts that are calibrated based on what is happening in the bloodstream. Those pulses are controlled by electrical signals inside the pancreatic beta cells, and those electrical signals depend on specific minerals, including magnesium, to maintain their stability and their rhythm. Think of it like the electrical system in a house. When the current is steady and regulated, every appliance works exactly as expected. When the current fluctuates too high, too low, irregular, devices that should work reliably start behaving unpredictably. Some run too hard, some barely function, and the whole system becomes erratic in ways that are difficult to diagnose because the problem is not in any single appliance, it is in the current itself. When magnesium is low, the electrical activity in pancreatic beta cells becomes less stable. The pulses become irregular, the timing gets off, and when that happens, two problems can emerge almost simultaneously. The first is under-release, not enough insulin at the right moment, allowing blood sugar to stay elevated longer than it should. The second is over-release, too much insulin in compensation, causing blood sugar to drop faster than it should, which triggers hunger, cravings, and that specific combination of fatigue and restlessness that most people call a crash. Both patterns are harmful. Both are driven, at least in part, by the mineral instability in pancreatic signaling, and both are the kind of unpredictability that makes people feel like their body is working against them, when what is actually happening is that the pancreas is trying to do its job without the electrical stability it needs to do it precisely. You are not imagining the inconsistency. It is real, and it is not random. That is number 4. And now we move to the one that hits closest to home for almost everyone who watches this video. Number 3, magnesium and the cellular energy system. Why you are exhausted even when your blood sugar is technically managed. This is the mechanism behind the specific kind of fatigue that I think you know better than I can describe. Not the tiredness of having done something strenuous, not the sleepiness of a poor night. A deeper thing, a heaviness that is already present when you wake up, an exhaustion that does not respond to rest. The feeling of running on an almost empty battery no matter what you eat, no matter how carefully you sleep, no matter how reasonable your day has been. I spent a long time going through the research on this specific symptom because I found it so consistently reported and so consistently unexplained in the standard conversation about metabolic health. And the connection I kept finding, over and over, pointed to the same place. Think of your body's energy production, like a factory that converts raw material into a finished product. Glucose is the raw material. ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is the finished product. ATP is your body's actual energy currency. Every muscle contraction, every thought, every heartbeat, every cellular process runs on ATP. Without it, nothing works. Here is what almost nobody tells you. Magnesium is required to activate ATP. Not helpful, not beneficial, structurally required. ATP in the body does not function in its raw form. It has to bind with magnesium to become biologically active. Scientists call this active form magnesium ATP. Without the magnesium, the ATP cannot do its job. The energy is there in theory. It is inaccessible in practice. So when magnesium is low, here is what happens. Glucose arrives. The body produces ATP from it, but that ATP cannot be activated properly. The energy conversion is inefficient. Your cells are effectively starved of usable energy, even when fuel is theoretically available. And your body, sensing the energy deficit, does what it does when it perceives a resource problem. It activates the stress response. It releases cortisol to try to mobilize stored energy. It keeps you in a state of low-level physiological alert, even when nothing threatening is happening. You feel wired but exhausted simultaneously. That specific combination that is very hard to explain, but immediately recognizable to anyone who has experienced it. Now you might be thinking, but I take B vitamins for energy, and they help a little. Why is magnesium the issue? B vitamins are genuinely important for energy metabolism, but several of the enzymes that use B vitamins to produce energy also require magnesium as a cofactor. You cannot run the energy factory efficiently with B vitamins alone if the machinery itself is mineral deficient. The two systems are interdependent, and here is the part that keeps people stuck for years without realizing why. They feel the crashes after carbohydrates, and they correctly reduce carbohydrates. They feel a little better initially, because less demand on a broken system produces less obvious failure. But the ATP pathway is still compromised. The energy conversion is still inefficient. The cortisol response is still being activated to compensate for cellular energy deficits that persist regardless of what they eat. So the fatigue returns, the crashes return in a different form, and they conclude that their metabolism is simply damaged beyond repair. It is not. The system is intact. It is operating without a critical resource. Give it that resource consistently, and the recovery is often faster than people expect. That is number 3. I want to pause here at the midpoint and bring something back. Earlier I mentioned the 71% reduction in insulin resistance risk that was associated with high magnesium levels in a long-term study. I promised to explain how a single mineral could produce a difference that large. You now understand 3 of the mechanisms: impaired insulin receptor signaling, pancreatic electrical instability, and compromised cellular energy production. Each one alone would be clinically significant. All 3 operating simultaneously in the same body every day begins to explain the magnitude of that finding. But there are 2 more mechanisms, and the remaining 2 are the ones that I believe most directly explain why so many people are deficient right now, today, despite their best efforts to eat well and take care of themselves. Because the second piece of this puzzle is not just about what magnesium does in the body. It is about why modern life systematically depletes it faster than most people can replace it. Before I get to number 2, I want to tell you about a man named Bernard. Bernard was 68, living outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and he had been actively managing type 2 diabetes for 6 years when he came to see me. He was meticulous, a retired engineer with a systematic approach to everything, including his health. He tracked his meals, his readings, his exercise, his sleep. He had spreadsheets. He had done his research. Bernard had started taking magnesium about a year before we met, because he had read about the connection, and it made sense to him. He took 400 milligrams daily, consistently, the same glycinate form I will describe shortly. And after a year, his subjective experience was that it had done almost nothing. His blood sugar was marginally better, perhaps, but nowhere near what the research suggested was possible. His fatigue was still present. His morning readings were still elevated. He was convinced, in his characteristically precise way, that he was simply a non-responder. He was not a non-responder. He was missing two other minerals that magnesium requires to be retained and used at the cellular level, and nobody had ever told him that supplementing magnesium alone, without addressing the sodium-potassium context, is often an exercise in futility, not because the mineral does not work, but because the body cannot hold on to it under the conditions that most health-conscious older adults are inadvertently creating. When we addressed all three minerals together, Bernard's response was rapid and specific. His morning fasting numbers dropped by an average of 21 points within 4 weeks. His energy, which he had described as consistently inadequate for the past several years, stabilized in a way that surprised even him, given his skepticism. He sent me a message after 6 weeks that said, "I was solving the right problem with an incomplete equation. Hold on to that phrase. It will make complete sense by the time we reach number 1. Number 2, magnesium, vitamin D, and why your vitamin D supplement is probably not doing what you think it is doing." Here is the symptom connection first. If you have had vitamin D deficiency diagnosed, if you have been taking a vitamin D supplement for months or years, and still do not feel the meaningful improvement in energy, immunity, and mood that vitamin D is supposed to provide, this mechanism is very likely why. Think of vitamin D like a car that arrives at your door fully assembled, but with no fuel. It looks ready to go. It is supposed to do its job, but it cannot do anything until you put fuel in. Magnesium is the fuel. Your body cannot use vitamin D in the form you absorb it from sunlight or consume it in a supplement. It exists in an inactive form before it can do anything useful. Before it can influence insulin sensitivity, immune function, bone health, or any of the dozens of processes it is involved in, it must be converted, activated in 2 stages. First in the liver, then in the kidneys. And both conversion steps require magnesium as a cofactor, meaning a required ingredient without which the process simply cannot proceed. Here is what happens when you take vitamin D while magnesium deficient. The vitamin D arrives. It reaches the liver. The enzyme that should convert it is waiting, but that enzyme requires magnesium to function. If magnesium is not present in adequate amounts, the conversion is sluggish or incomplete. Vitamin D sits in an unusable form in your bloodstream. Your blood test may even show that your vitamin D levels are normal or improving, because the test measures total vitamin D, not the activated form, but you are not experiencing the benefit, because the active, usable version was never properly produced. And when I found out about the two-way relationship between vitamin D and magnesium, honestly, I was angry that nobody was explaining this to people. Here is why. When vitamin D is very low, the body tries to compensate in ways that increase the demand for magnesium, meaning low vitamin D causes you to burn through magnesium faster, and low magnesium prevents vitamin D from being activated. So you end up in a cycle where both are low, and each one is making the other worse, simultaneously. You supplement vitamin D. The vitamin D cannot activate without magnesium. The deficiency persists. The benefits do not materialize, and you conclude that either vitamin D does not work for you or that you need an even higher dose. Clinical research has confirmed this relationship directly. Studies have shown that giving magnesium alongside vitamin D produces significantly better outcomes than vitamin D alone. The vitamin D activates more completely. Insulin sensitivity improves more. Inflammation markers drop more, because the two nutrients were working together the way they were designed to work. If you are currently taking vitamin D and not feeling a significant benefit, there is a very strong chance this is the reason. And this is not just about vitamin D. Magnesium is a cofactor in over 300 biochemical reactions in the human body. 300. It is not a secondary mineral. It is foundational infrastructure, as essential to the smooth operation of your body's systems as the electrical wiring in a building. When the wiring is inadequate, every system that depends on it underperforms, and the failures appear in dozens of different places simultaneously, making them look like separate problems when they are all expressions of the same underlying deficit. That is number 2. And here it is, number 1, the mechanism that explains why people try magnesium and feel like it did not work. The one that explains Bernard's incomplete equation. The one that ties everything else together. Number 1, why magnesium cannot do its job without adequate sodium and potassium, and why the exact lifestyle changes most health-conscious people make are systematically depleting all three. Let me start with a symptom, because this one is subtle and easy to dismiss. You have made real changes to your diet. You have cleaned things up. You eat less processed food. You may be low carb, or careful with carbs, or following some version of a diet that reduces refined foods, and you feel moderately better in some ways. But there is still something off, still a background fatigue, still inconsistency in your blood sugar, still the sense that the improvements you have made are not producing results proportionate to the effort you are putting in. Here is what is very likely happening, and this is the piece I wish someone had shared with me years earlier, so I could have shared it with my patients sooner. Your body's ability to retain and use magnesium depends significantly on 2 other minerals, sodium and potassium. These 3 minerals are part of the same electrolyte system. They influence each other's absorption, retention, and cellular function constantly. They are not independent variables, they are partners, and when one is disrupted, the others are affected, often in ways that are impossible to detect through standard blood testing. Start with sodium. Most people trying to improve their metabolic health reduce sodium, cutting out processed foods, eating cleaner, sometimes following low-carb or ketogenic approaches. These are generally positive changes. But here is the consequence that almost nobody warns you about. When sodium levels drop significantly, as they do on very low-carb diets or extended periods of clean eating, your kidneys respond by excreting more magnesium. The kidneys have a regulatory system that links sodium and magnesium retention. When one goes down, the other tends to follow. So the very dietary changes people make to improve their health, the changes that are often associated with a sense of doing everything right, are simultaneously accelerating magnesium loss through the kidneys. You are eating cleaner. You are supplementing magnesium. And your kidneys are flushing it out faster than you can replace it. The supplement is not failing you. The context in which you are taking it is working against it. Now, potassium. Magnesium and potassium have an intimate relationship inside the cell. They work together to maintain the membrane potential, the electrical charge that every cell maintains across its membrane. This charge is what allows cells to communicate, to respond to signals, to do their jobs. Magnesium helps regulate how potassium moves in and out of cells. And when potassium is low, the cell's ability to use magnesium effectively is compromised. The two are so closely linked that in clinical medicine, it is nearly impossible to correct low potassium without also correcting low magnesium first. They restore together, or they do not restore at all. Think about what this means for someone who is eating carefully, perhaps low carb or calorie conscious, and supplementing magnesium without seeing results. They are losing magnesium through dietary insufficiency because the foods richest in magnesium, dark leafy greens, pumpkin seeds, black beans, whole grains, dark chocolate, are not the foods that dominate even careful modern diets. They are losing magnesium through the kidneys because sodium is low, and they are struggling to use the magnesium they do have because potassium is depleted. The magnesium supplement arrives. There is nowhere adequate for it to go, and the person concludes that magnesium does not work for them, when in reality, they were solving the right problem with an incomplete equation. That phrase, the right problem with an incomplete equation, is exactly what Bernard said, and it is exactly the situation that most people who have tried magnesium and felt disappointed are actually in. You are not a non-responder. You are a person who was given half the information. Now I want to explain why magnesium deficiency is so extraordinarily common. So common that estimates suggest somewhere between 50 and 80% of adults in Western countries are not getting adequate amounts. Because understanding this helps you understand that your situation is not unusual, not a personal failure, and not mysterious. There are three converging reasons that this deficiency has become the rule, rather than the exception. The first is soil depletion. Intensive agricultural practices over the past several decades have significantly reduced the mineral content of the soil where our food grows. Studies comparing the nutritional content of produce today versus 50 years ago have found substantial reductions in magnesium and other minerals. The spinach looks the same, the mineral density is genuinely lower. The second is the modern diet itself. The foods richest in magnesium, dark leafy greens, seeds, legumes, whole grains, are not what the bulk of most people's diets are built from. The foods that dominate modern eating are almost entirely stripped of magnesium during processing. White flour has had most of its magnesium removed. Packaged foods provide almost none. The third is the lifestyle factors we have been discussing. Caffeine and alcohol both have diuretic effects that increase magnesium excretion. Low-sodium diets cause renal magnesium wasting. Chronic stress, and this is the piece that creates the most insidious cycle, triggers the release of cortisol, which causes magnesium to be pulled from the cells and excreted. And here is where the cycle closes on itself. Low magnesium makes the stress response more sensitive, causing the adrenal glands to release more cortisol in response to the same stressor, which causes more magnesium loss, which makes the stress response even more reactive. Cortisol also raises blood sugar directly through a mechanism that operates completely independently of what you eat. It mobilizes stored glucose to provide energy for the perceived threat. So if you are in a chronic cycle of low magnesium and sensitized cortisol response, your blood sugar is being pushed upward continuously, including while you sleep. This is the precise mechanism behind the dawn phenomenon, the blood sugar rise in the early morning hours that happens without eating. Cortisol naturally rises before waking to prepare the body for the day. In someone with low magnesium and a sensitized stress response, that cortisol surge is stronger than it should be, and the glucose it releases is more than the system can cleanly manage. That morning reading that makes no sense. This is very likely part of the explanation. And there is one more dimension that most people have not considered: the gut connection. Your gut microbiome, the community of bacteria in your digestive system, directly influences how efficiently you absorb minerals, including magnesium. When the gut lining is inflamed, which is extremely common in people following modern diets, even relatively healthy ones, magnesium absorption drops. Two people can eat nearly identical diets and have completely different magnesium status because one person's gut is absorbing minerals efficiently and the other's is not. Diet looks the same on paper. Cellular outcomes are completely different. This also means that supporting gut health through fermented foods, prebiotic fiber, plant diversity is not separate from supporting magnesium status. They reinforce each other. And magnesium itself plays a role in maintaining gut lining integrity, creating the upward spiral you want, rather than the downward one you are trying to escape. Now let me address the practical question that matters most after everything I have described. Not just whether to supplement magnesium, but which form, how much, when, and in what context. Because the form makes an enormous difference, and most people are using the least effective option available. Magnesium oxide is the most common form in inexpensive supplements and many multivitamins. Studies suggest only about 4% of the magnesium in this form actually reaches the bloodstream. Most of it passes through the gut unabsorbed, which is why it has a strong laxative effect. If you have tried magnesium before and experienced significant digestive issues, or if you tried it and felt nothing, there is a very good chance magnesium oxide was the form you were using. Magnesium glycinate is bound to glycine, an amino acid. It absorbs significantly more efficiently than oxide and is very gentle on the digestive system. Glycine itself has calming properties, making this form particularly useful for sleep, anxiety, and stress-related symptoms. This is the form I recommend most consistently as a starting point for most people. Magnesium malate is bound to malic acid, which is involved in the same energy production pathways we discussed, the ones that require magnesium to function. This form tends to be particularly effective for people whose primary symptom is fatigue, because you are providing the magnesium and the malic acid simultaneously. Some people find it slightly more energizing than glycinate, which can be useful during the day. Magnesium threonate is a newer form with promising research suggesting it crosses the blood-brain barrier more effectively than other forms. The research on cognitive benefits is early but interesting, and it tends to be the most expensive option. For practical starting purposes, magnesium glycinate or magnesium malate, 200 to 300 milligrams daily to start, gradually building to 400 milligrams. Take it in the evening, roughly 2 to 3 hours before bed. This is when the sleep-related benefits of magnesium are most clearly expressed. Deeper, more restorative sleep, which itself improves insulin sensitivity the following day. Poor sleep can reduce insulin sensitivity by as much as 30% after just a few nights. Improving sleep quality through magnesium supplementation is not just about rest, it is a direct metabolic intervention. And address the mineral context. If you are eating very low sodium, be aware of the renal magnesium wasting effect, and ensure you are not inadvertently accelerating deficiency while trying to supplement your way out of it. Include potassium-rich foods, avocados, sweet potatoes, beans, leafy greens, bananas, because magnesium and potassium restore together or not at all. This is not a complex protocol, but it is a complete one, which makes all the difference. Now let me address the timeline question honestly, because I think people deserve realistic expectations rather than either inflated promises or unnecessary discouragement. Some improvements tend to come relatively quickly. Sleep quality often improves within 1 to 2 weeks. Deeper sleep, easier time falling asleep, waking up more rested, muscle cramps, particularly the nighttime kind, often resolve within a similar time frame. These are the early signals that the nervous system and muscular system are getting what they need. Morning blood sugar can begin to show improvement within 2 to 4 weeks, though this varies considerably based on starting point and whether the mineral context has been addressed. The unpredictable day-to-day swings that frustrate most people. The same meal producing completely different results on different days, often stabilize earlier than the absolute numbers improve, which itself is enormously meaningful for quality of life. Energy, the stable, consistent energy that does not spike and crash, typically takes longer. 4 to 8 weeks for most people to notice a meaningful difference, because the ATP pathways and cellular energy systems take time to normalize after extended deficiency. The improvements are gradual enough that they can be easy to miss day to day, which is why keeping a simple log, morning readings, energy across the day, sleep quality is genuinely useful during the first 30 days. Longer-term markers, the ones that show up on lab work, take the longest, but they do move. The 71% and 47% risk reductions in the long-term studies were measured over extended periods because that is the timescale on which the cellular environment genuinely changes. The biology works. It works on its own timeline, and it rewards consistency in a way that sporadic supplementation never can. Before I close, I want to come back to Evelyn, the woman from Raleigh who had been managing pre-diabetes for 4 years when she came to see me. Doing everything right and still stuck, still confused about why the information she had gathered was not translating into the results she needed. 3 months after we addressed her magnesium status properly, with the right form, the right dose, the attention to potassium and sodium context, and the gut-supporting dietary additions that improved her absorption, she sent me a note that I have thought about many times since. She said, "I finally understand why I felt like I was speaking the right language, but somehow nobody was listening. My body was not failing to respond. It was responding correctly to an environment I did not know I had created." That is the reframe I want to leave you with today. Your body has not broken down. It has not decided to stop cooperating. It is responding accurately and predictably to a mineral environment that the modern world has quietly created over years of soil depletion, food processing, clean eating that inadvertently depletes electrolytes, and chronic stress that accelerates mineral loss faster than diet can replace it. You came into this video with an unexplained morning reading and a fatigue that would not resolve, and a sense that something in your body had changed in a way nobody could account for. Now you have an account. 5 specific mechanisms, 1 foundational mineral, and a clear explanation of why the approaches that were supposed to work have been working with an incomplete equation. Evelyn's body was not failing to respond. It was responding correctly to an environment she did not know she had created. Yours is too. And now you can change the environment. And hey, if you made it all the way here, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Hit the like button to let me know this was worth your time. And leave a comment below. Tell me what country you're watching from. Seriously, I read every single one, and it means a lot to see how far this community reaches. You know what the problem is with diabetes and high blood sugar. Most people find out way too late. And by the time they do, they have no idea where to even start. That's why I decided to create a free guide. It's called the Glucose Paradox. And inside, you'll find everything you wish you'd known sooner. I'll explain how blood sugar actually works, and why your body sometimes reacts the exact opposite way you'd expect. That's why it's called a paradox. I've also included concrete habits you can start changing right now, even if you know zero about nutrition or medicine. It's free, you can download it in a second, and it might be the single most useful thing you do for your health today. Just click the link in the description to head to the site, drop your email, and get the guide sent straight to you. Don't put this off.